is presumed innocent until the contrary is proved. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. How much proof is necessary? In other words, what is the standard of proof? I have adopted the very high standard of overwhelming preponderance of evidence pursuant to the recommendation of Professor Charles Black of Yale University, author of The Impeachment, considered the Bible for the whole world on impeachment process in a democracy. My standard is very high because removal by conviction on impeachment is a stunning penalty, the ruin of a life. The defendant admitted that he did not declare his dollar accounts and certain commingled peso accounts in his SAL-N. Let us begin with this threshold question. Did this omission amount to an impeachable offense? No. Under the rule of exhaustion generis, when a general word occurs after a number of specific words, the meaning of the general word shall be limited to the kind or class of thing within which the specific words fall. The Constitution provides that the impeachable offenses are culpable violation of the Constitution, treason, bribery, graft and corruption, other high crimes, or betrayal of public trust. An omission in good faith in the SAL-N carries a life penalty and is even allowed by law to be corrected by the person who submitted it. Thus, it is not impeachable because it is not in the same class as the offenses enumerated in the Constitution. If we disregard this rule of exhaustion generis, then we can interpret the law to mean anything as long as the enumeration of specific words is followed by a general word. Wala nang limitasyon yon. Pag sinabi pala ng Constitution, other high crimes or betrayal of public trust, wala na palang limitasyon yon. Iyan, kung hindi ka nag-aaral ng batas. Sabi ng batas, you apply the rule of exhaustion generis. Kailangan may listahan na isa-isa nilang sinasabi kung anong kasalanan at merong isang salita na hindi mo alam kung anong kasalanan, dapat basahin mo yan na pare-pareho doon sa kasalanan na nalista na. In other words, it should belong to the same class. Does omission in the SAL-N belong to the same class as, for example, treason, bribery, etc.? The Constitution simply provides that a public officer shall submit a declaration under oath of his assets, liabilities, and net worth. I am quoting the Constitution. That is all. There are no details. The Constitution is a brief declaration of fundamental principles. Many constitutional provisions are only commands to the Congress to enact laws to carry out the purpose of the Charter. As a general rule, constitutional provisions are not self-executory. Hindi naman pwede na basahin mo Constitution na para ka bang nagbasa ng dyaryo, tapos kanya-kanya kayong interpretasyon. Hindi ganon yun. Kaya meron tayong constitutional law, which is said to be the most difficult subject to pass in the entire College of Law. Hindi ganon kadali magbasa ng Constitution. Constitutional analysis is a field of art in itself. It is a technical field. Kaya 4 na taon ang abogasiya. Kung basta sino lang pala pwede mag-interpret ng Constitution, bakit ba tayo may mga abogado? Kanya-kanya na lang. The usual exceptions are the Bill of Rights. Yan. Self-executory yan. Basahin mo, sundin mo. And constitutional provision. Pag sinabi ng batas, hindi pwede ito, yan, sundin mo kaagad. Pero lahat, hindi mo pwedeng masunod kaagad-agad. Mag-antay ka kung anong batas ang ipapasa ng Kongreso. Wala kaming ginagawa sa Kongreso kung hindi mag-antay kung anong sinabi ng Constitution. That is the main function of legislation.
I think the sign language guy is panicking now.
All other constitutional provisions, such as the SAL provision, need implementing laws to provide the details. Hence, Congress, to implement this constitutional provision, has passed a number of laws, including the Foreign Currency Act, which confers absolute confidentiality on dollar deposits. Nakikinig lang ako noon, sa mga argumento na the Foreign Currency Act violates the Constitution. I was already hoping with all my heart that God would strike me dead. Mabuti pang mamatay ako bilang isang abogada nang sa makikinig ako ng mga rason na ganon. Wala yan sa libro, wala yan dito, wala yan doon. Para bang hindi ka nagbasa ng batas mo. Di ibig mo sabihin wala na palang batas na nag-iiral sa mga trial na ito. Hindi kanya-kanya ng isipan. There is no conflict between the Constitution and the Foreign Currency Act. The perceived conflict is so simplistic that it is seriously laughable. Nakakatawa ka o nagpapatawa ka. If there is any conflict, it is between the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards on the one hand, which provide for a waiver of confidentiality, and the Foreign Currency Act on the other hand, which provide for absolute confidentiality. Kaya sinusunod natin ang batas, konstitusyon, pero ang batas na pinairal ng Kongreso, mukhang may conflict. Pero hindi mo masabi na the Constitution is clear, so the Constitution will of course prevail over an ordinary law. Ano naman klaseng kagaguhan yan? Galit kayo dahil binabit ko ang salita na kagaguhan? I repeat, kagaguhan yan. Why do you study law if that is your opinion? At bakit matawagin at quasi judicial itong proceedings na ito? If it's all purely political and anyone can have his own opinion. It is for Congress to balance on the one hand the need for public accountability from public officers with, on the other hand, the desperate need for foreign investment, which entails confidentiality on pain of driving away investors from our country. Yan ang rason kung bakit meron tayong Foreign Currency Deposit Act. Dahil gusto natin na paratingin ang foreign investment at walang foreign investor. I promise you na darating kung merong bayan na may batas pa na lahat ng dolyar mo, ideklara mo. Walang darating mas isa. That is the purpose of that law. Did anybody of you bother to find out why we have a Currency Deposit Act? Puro lang tingin ninyo tungkol sa impeachment. Iparking mong pera mo dyan. Kaya, isasalungat ko yung mga argumento ninyong yan. It makes me angry, as a former law professor and as a future judge of the International Criminal Court, that you should presume to administer justice in this manner. I am insulted by the way your minds run. It is for Congress. The argument that the dollar deposit protected from inquiry would nullify the principle of transparency is for Congress to resolve. Eh di tayo, kayo sa House at kami sa Senate, tayong gumawa niyan, tayo ngayon ang may problema. Bibigyan natin ng solusyon ng problema. We could retain the absolute confidentiality clause with the amendment that Filipino public officers are not protected. Yun ang dapat gagawin natin. The prosecution mistakes admission for confession. In law, in a confession, the defendant admits his guilt. In an admission, the defendant merely states facts which might tend to prove his guilt. In the instant case, the defendant did not make a confession, but merely an admission with a legal defense. As a former RTC judge, I find it reprehensible beyond belief, that the AMLA document was introduced in evidence without authentication as required by the rules of evidence. Kapag-panggapan tayo na korte tayo pa sa judicial, yun pala, sinabi pa natin na if there is any need, we shall use as a supplementary authority the rules of court. Ayun pala, hindi natin susundin ang rules of evidence. Hindi ka pwede magdala ng papel sa korte. I-authenticate mo. Kung hindi mo intindi kung anong authenticate, di huwag kang mag-abogado dyan. I am deeply disappointed that on at least 3 occasions, the prosecution claimed that these documents came from an anonymous source. Strike me dead. 3 times is just too much coincidence. Are you for real prosecution? Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. False in one thing, false in all things. The defendant used his own name in all his question transactions. He could have done otherwise if his purpose was invisibility. Kung ayaw niyang matuklasan, kadali-dali. Di gamitin niya pangalan ng iba. Lahat naman kayo, hindi naman lahat. Marami sa atin dito, tungkol na sa batas, ibang pangalan na ginagamit. Sigurado ako niyan. RTC judge ako eh. Mag-isa lang akong RTC judge dito sa korte nito. Maski ano, pwede mo manufacture sa Pilipinas. Minsan, binigyan pa nga ako ng death certificate ng kusado. Pagkatapos, minahuli ko, huling-huli, buhay na buhay. Ganon ang ating korte dito. Huwag na kong paandara ng kalukuhan ninyo dahil alam na alam ko yon. Kayo, nag-practice kayo, 1 taon, 2 taon. Ako, RTC judge. Why would a suspected criminal leave his calling cards at the scene of the crime? Kung noon pa, gusto pala niyang itago ang kayamanan niya, eh bakit niya ilagay sa pangalan niya? Marami dito sa Pilipinas naglalagay sa ibang pangalan ng ibang tao. Hindi kaya alam ng abogado yon?
Yung streaming, linagay din sa'yo, di ba?
May master's pa sa Harvard, may doctorate pa sa UST. Ganun kaya siya katanga?
Sinara mo ba yung Firefox window?
Assuming for the sake of argument that there is a preponderance of evidence for the prosecution, the preponderance is not overwhelming. Yan ang Ingles. Hinada ko para sa 2 minutes ko. Eh wala pala kaming limitasyon. Ngayon Tagalog naman, at hingi na ako ng paumanhin, abansi pa lang, dahil kulang na kulang ang Tagalog ko. Unang punto, kung matalo ang Chief Justice dito, di ang ibig sabihin pala, ang mga nananalo ay mga honest na tao. Dahil kinundina nila dahil corrupt yung taong yon. Di, palagay din natin na itong mga representante, dahil lahat tayo, we represent the people, isn't that so? That's why we're elected officers. We're supposed to represent our constituencies. Eh kung hatulan natin may sala yan, di, ibig lang dahil crooked siya, ibig lang sabihin tayo, honest tayo. Ngayon, kung lahat pala tayo honest, o marami pala tayo sa atin ay honest, why is the Philippines often, or if not all the time, why is the Philippines always ranked as one of the most corrupt countries in the whole world? Yan, sagutin niyo ako niyan. Nagpapakalinis kayo? Aba kung malinis pala ang mga opisyalis natin at malinis pala sa buong bansa, eh bakit palagi tayong nililista ng Transparency International as one of the most corrupt countries in the world? Magtitinginan tayo? Sino kaya dito? Yan ang unang punto ko. Pangalawa, tumigil na kayo ng kapapangkapan nyo, mga artista. Merong mga politiko na alam natin kung anong loopholes nila sa SALN. Deposito ang sinasabi ng batas, pagkatapusan ng Disyembre, katapusan ng taon, magdeklara ka kung magkano pera mo sa bangko. Hindi ba gini-withdraw nila pera nila sa buwan na Nobyembre o Disyembre para pag naglagay sila, pag nag-file sila ng SALN nila, wala nga silang deposito. O kaya meron lang sila ng couple of thousands. Kasi withdraw nila eh. Pag Enero, i-deposit nila uli.
I think she's gonna
Taong
pop.
bayan, kayo ang magtestigo. Yan. Bakit hindi natin habulin yung ganon? Pangalawa, palusot. O pangalawa, na ginagawa nila na loophole sa SALN. Lahat ng pag-ari nila, real estate, bank accounts, iba pang pag-ari, lalagay sa ibang pangalan. Yan is very, very widespread. O di wala na naman sila pag-ari. Dahil lahat, nilagay na lang sa ibang pangalan. Kung bawal ang asawa at ang mga anak, dahil sa batas ay inspeksyonin pati yan, yung mga malapit sa kanila. Di doon sa mga malalayo na mga kamag-anak. O kaya maski hindi kamag-anak, sa kaibigan na pinagkakatiwalaan nila. What a hypocritical accusation. That is a problem in this country. We're all for honest government, and yet the world condemns us as one of the most corrupt countries in the world. That's why it is difficult to win in any international election, in any international campaign, because the Philippines, among others, has a reputation of being a corrupt country. Isip ng iba, kung corrupt ang bayan na yan, walang matinong lalabas dyan. Walang matinong ibubunga yan. Bawat isa ba sa inyo, walang sala tungkol sa SALN? Bigyan niyo ako ng sapang buhay. Panginoon, bigyan mo ako ng sapang buhay at imbestigahin ko lahat. Isa-isa. Dito sa Senado, sa House of Representatives, tignan natin. Pati sarili ko, imbestigahin ko.
Order, please.
daming loopholes ng SALN na yan. Ba't hindi kayo umimik noon? Ba't ngayon bigla na lang kayong so exercised about a loophole? Well, if that is the case, then let us all just put our assets in dollars and know the purpose of the SALN will be perverted or corrupted. That is true. But what about all the other loopholes? Bakit ngayon lang kayo nagalit tungkol sa loophole na yan? Bakit doon pa? Dahil yung iba sa atin, dinagamit yung mismong loopholes na yon. Hindi lang sila ma-impeach. Sunod na punto. Sinabi ko sa umpisa, this is quasi-judicial and this is quasi-political. Yan ang minado yan ng mga authors. Si Professor Charles Black ng Yale, si Professor Raoul Berger ng Harvard. Mga tinitingala yan ng mga authorities all over the world. Ngayon, this is quasi-judicial. Ibig sabihin, kalahati niyan politika. Kalahati yan batas. Napakahirap gawin yan. Ngayon, ako, dahil naging RTC judge, ang ginagamit ko lang ang batas. Wala akong ginagamit sa pampolitika dahil hindi na ako makatakbo ulit. Natawag na ako ng International Criminal Court. Wala na akong kinabukasan sa politika sa Pilipinas. Even if I wanted to, I am prohibited because this is already my second term, consecutive term. Ngayon, ano ba ang sinasabi na quasi-political? Investigahin nga natin for future impeachments. Anong sinasabi na quasi-judicial, quasi-political? Madaling intindihin ang quasi-judicial. Kalahati niyan tungkol sa justisya o tungkol sa batas. Pero kalahati yan tungkol sa politika. Anong ibig sabihin ng tungkol sa politika? Tungkol sa politika, dahil ang ibig sabihin dyan, pag-isipan mo at pakinggan mo ang mga taong bumoto sa iyo. That is actually the meaning of quasi-political. Because the people might disagree with what the law says. Yun ang pakikinggan mo. That is the meaning of quasi-political. Hindi ibig sabihin quasi-political na buboto ka, ulit bibigyan ka ng mamahaling proyekto sa public works na kung saan maaaring kumita ka. Alam naman natin yan. Kung magkano ang halaga ng public works mo, 10% punta sa iyo kung gusto mo. Hindi iyon ang ibig sabihin na politika. At hindi ibig sabihin na quasi-political na isipin mo, nako, tatakbo ako either for re-election or for another position, or I need some position in government for my kalyado ko, who I will use as my dummy. That is not the meaning of quasi-political.
I request the lady to wind up.
I thought that I was unlimited. I prepared 2-minute paper, but I will obey the injunction. Tsaka, isang punto. Nang nagtapos magpresenta ng ebidensyang prosecution, naglabas ng mga survey ng mga tao gusto pala na guilty ang Chief Justice. Ngayon natapos ang depensa, saan na yun ang mga survey? Wala. Huli sa lahat, pinakamalaga, anong magiging, hindi lang importante kung anong magiging desisyon natin ngayong hapon, anong magiging katuparan, anong susunod sa ating desisyon. Ulit ba mananalo tayo sa botohan? Panalo na tayo sa masa na nakakarami sa ating bansa. And we follow the rule of the majority.
I think they changed the sign language person.
Educated
He died.
Sa kasaysayan ng ating bansa, this will go down in history. Nagtrabaho ako abroad. Nagka-cancer ang tatay ko. Bumalik ako. Sabi ng tatay ko, mag-resign ka nga dyan sa trabaho mong yan. Wala kang silbi sa bayan mo. Magsilbi ka sa sarili mong kababayan. Nagsilbing na nga ako. Pero kung ang politika ay mangingibabaw sa batas, wala na rin akong silbi. Bayan, kayo ang maghatol sa ginagawa dito sa impeachment trial.
Sure vote.
Would you be very surprised if I say that I vote not guilty?
Honorable Senator Judge Drilon.
Mr. President, the Constitution commands every public official, including the respondent Chief Justice, to file an accurate and complete SALN. This requirement is not a mere formality, as it goes into the heart of a public official's and respondents' moral fitness to hold public office. Respondent concealed his luxurious condominiums for 5 years after they were fully paid. Respondent reported the values of these condominiums at less than 50% acquisition cost. Respondent admits that he did not declare $2.4 million and 80 million pesos in his SALN. The enormity of the respondent's hidden assets, over 180 million pesos, or 50 times more than his declared cash assets, is scandalous. It is grossly disproportionate to his total income for 10 years of about 27 million pesos. It establishes a prima facie case of ill-gotten wealth under the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. 180 million pesos. Res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. Respondent justifies his concealment of his dollar accounts because of the alleged confidentiality in Republic Act 6426. This kind of interpretation, Mr. President, will encourage aspiring thieves in government to simply hide all their loot in FCDU accounts. The law does not prohibit respondent from disclosing his foreign currency deposit. What the law bars is for a bank to disclose these foreign currency deposits without the consent of the depositor. In fact, the respondent authorized this impeachment court to inquire into them. How can the respondent, the Chief Justice no less, claim good faith in asserting such a twisted interpretation of the law? Besides, Mr. President, the defense of good faith cannot be invoked. The punishable act of non-reporting of assets in one SALN is mala prohibita, where good faith is immaterial. Respondent concealed his 80 million peso deposits because allegedly they are commingled funds of BGEI and that of his relatives. Respondent presented no evidence to substantiate his claims. If BGEI funds are held in trust, respondent must report such funds as assets and enter the corresponding liabilities in his SALN. He did not. He cannot claim good faith. He was the manager of SGV's tax department. The Supreme Court dismissed Delsa Flores, a lowly court interpreter, for not reporting in her SALN her stall in a public market. The Chief Justice must be held to a much higher standard. Those who dispense justice must conform to the highest standards of professional integrity and personal honesty. Chief Justice Corona knowingly, deliberately, and with malice aforethought filed inaccurate and false SALNs to conceal his enormous wealth. Where our Constitution and our laws require disclosure, he chose the path of concealment. He has lost his moral fitness to serve the people. He has betrayed the public trust. He cannot be Chief Justice a minute longer. I find the respondent guilty of Article 2.
Thank you.
Honorable Senator Judge Escudero.
It is written,
24 minutes.
do not judge lest you be judged, for the measure you measure with will be measured back to you. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues in the Senate and the House, the prosecution and defense panels, my countrymen, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. While I do not approve of the manner and way by which the House of Representatives initiated, proceeded, and handled this impeachment, when they filed the complaint for impeachment before the Senate, the House, in the exercise of its constitutional mandate, in the exercise of its wisdom, determined that non-declaration in one sal-en is an impeachable offense. Ibig sabihin po nito, mula ngayon, dahil sa pagdeterminang yan ng Kamara de Representantes, pwede na nating tanggalin ang punong mahistrado bilang ang Pangulo at ikalawang Pangulo ng bansa, gayon din ibang mga impeachable officers kapag ka sila ay merong ari-arian na hindi dineklara sa kanilang salen. Mr. President, matapos po aminin ni Chief Justice Corona na meron siyang $2.4 million at 80 million pesos na hindi niya dineklara sa kanyang salen, naging simple na lamang ang kailangang pagdesisyonan at pagpasyahan ng Senado. At ito po ay hindi nga ba ito kailangan ideklara dahil sa Republic Act 6426 o FCDU law. Kung sasang-ayon tayo sa posisyong ito ni Chief Justice Corona, dapat natin siyang ipawalang sala. Subalit, kung di tayo sasang-ayon dito, dapat ay gawaran natin siya ng hatol. Ikinalulungkot ko po, Mr. President, na di ko masasang-ayunan ang posisyong ito ng punong mahistrado. Para sa akin, maliwanag ang batas. Hindi po ito nagbabanggaan. Ang pinagbabawalan ng FCDU law na mag-release ng impormasyon tungkol sa dollar accounts ay ang bangko at hindi ang depositor. Samantala, ang ating saligang batas at Republic Act 6713 pinag-uutos na ideklara ng lahat ng naninilbihan sa pamahalaan ang lahat ng kanilang yaman at pinagkakautangan. Kung ayaw ninyong ideklara, edi huwag kayong tumakbo para o tumanggap ng anumang pwesto sa gobyerno. Subalit kung ikaw ay naninilbihan sa pamahalaan, dapat lang at kailangan ideklara mo ang lahat ng ito. Dahil dito, mabigat man sa aking kalooban, kailangan gumagawad ng hatol laban kay Chief Justice Corona. Maging ganun pa man at sa kabila ng aking hatol, nais ko pong muling batiin si Chief Justice Corona dahil sa kasaysayan ng ating bansa, siya ang alam kong kauna-unahang opisyal na naglakas loob at nag-execute ng waiver para buksan ang lahat ng kanyang mga deposito sa bangko. Sana po siya at ang kasong ito ang magsilbing hudyat para sa isang bagong simula sa ating bansa. Isang bagong simula kung saan hindi na pwede ang dating gawi. Hindi na pwede ang dati nating nakasanayan. Panahon na po ito marahil na taasan natin ang antas ng pamantayan ng mga naninilbihan sa pamahalaan. At dapat po pantay ang pamantayang ito hindi lamang kay Chief Justice Corona, kung hindi para sa ating lahat. Kahapon isinumiti ko sa Senado ang isang waiver pabor sa Ombudsman upang buksan kung kinakailangan ang anumang deposito ko, dollar man o anumang uri ng currency, kaugnay at kalakip ng ating salen. Hinihimok at hinahamon ko ang lahat ng aking kasamahan sa Senado, gayon din sa Kongreso, na gawin din ito. Hinihiling ko rin sa aking mga kasamahan sa Senado at sa